Most advice that pre-meds get, it's not malicious. It's actually very much well-intentioned, but the problem is that it's designed to make you feel good now. You're gonna feel more calm, but it's not gonna necessarily increase the odds of you achieving your goal of getting to med school, of becoming a doctor. It's not going to reduce your risk long-term. So today I wanna talk about what that good advice is that's socially accepted, it's comforting, but it quietly raises the chances that you get stuck. Now, the first one is to apply like everyone else, meaning that you should apply to 15 to 20 medical schools. And the reason it feels good is that it is manageable, it is cheaper, it is less overwhelming, and since everyone's repeating it, it feels safer in a way, right? But the reason it keeps people stuck is that standard means average behavior, not optimal. And if the standard or average acceptance rate year after year is 40 to 45%, then that average strategy is going to produce a lot of rejections. So what we want to do here is actually reduce that risk of you not getting into med school. And we want to apply to more schools who do so intelligently. And for most applicants, your odds improve meaningfully when you're applying to at least 25 to 30 schools. And after that, it is going to start asymptoting. And this isn't a matter of being neurotic, it's a matter of optionality and almost buying insurance in a way. Now, this brings me to point number 2, which is actually a counterpoint to applying more broadly, which is you don't want to apply wider because secondaries are going to destroy you. You're going to have so many essays you have to write. And the reason that this feels good to hear is that it's going to validate that feeling of overwhelm. It gives you permission to stop a little bit early. But the reason it keeps people stuck is that writing additional secondaries isn't as bad as most people think, because secondary essays actually repeat the same themes again and again and again. So the first, let's say 8 to 12 are the hardest because you are building up those templates and those stories, but later secondaries, after the first 10 to 15, they often become way faster because you're copy pasting, you're reusing and tailoring those stories to just slightly different prompts. So the key thing here is that your effort is front loaded. If you apply to 15 or 20 schools, like most people would suggest, you're still going through those first 10 difficult secondaries. But if you stop early, you're absorbing a lot of that pain of the first 10, but you miss much of that payoff. So what you're gonna find is that as you do more secondaries, you're building these reusable like story modules, things about challenges or failure or growth or teamwork or service, leadership, ethics, and various themes like that. And you're gonna map those prompts to your story modules. The third piece of feel-good advice is if you don't get in, don't worry about it, just take a gap year. And the reason it feels good is that it comes across as very compassionate. It's gonna reduce anxiety. It makes rejection feel less scary. It's just part of the process. But the reason this keeps people stuck is that reapplication cycles are emotionally and strategically costly. They're massive opportunity costs. You have delays, you have money, and most people underestimate that. Not only that, being a reapplicant puts you at a disadvantage because now the medical schools reviewing your application need to see what's better about you now than before. If you didn't change anything and you're just reapplying hoping to get in the second time around, that's not a good enough story. Now, an intentional gap year is different than an accidental gap year. An intentional gap year is that you are planning ahead, you're saying, I'm not applying this year, I'm gonna do some other things instead. That's an intentional gap year, nothing wrong with that. An accidental gap year is not getting in that cycle that you first applied. And an intentional gap year might be necessary for a lot of candidates, but the accidental ones certainly aren't. So the reframe I want you to take here is that not that gap years are bad, but that your default plan should be reducing the probability of having an accidental gap year and rather only taking a gap year if it is an intentional one. Point number 4 is that any med school is fine, just focus on getting in because you're gonna be a doctor at the end of the day. And the reason it feels good is that it removes decision pressure. It removes the pressure of trying to get into the best medical school you can. Just getting into any is good enough. And it feels more mature. It feels more egalitarian, less prestigious, less snobby, right? But the reason it keeps people stuck is that right now you're focused on just getting into med school, which is very challenging. But after med school, you have to get into residency. And different medical schools are going to give you different opportunities when it comes to getting into residency. So think about the various resources that a program can offer you. So if you, let's say right now you want to be a family medicine doctor, but you go to med school, you change your mind because 73% of med students change their mind about their specialty. And by the end of med school, you realize that you've fallen in love with neurosurgery, one of the most competitive specialties to get into. And if you're at a program that is very much primary care focused and doesn't have a neurosurgery residency program, therefore doesn't have the academic neurosurgeons, the research opportunities, etc., it's going to be so much harder for you to get into a neurosurgery residency. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is a lot harder though. And getting into neurosurgery residency, even with a great program that has all those resources, is already really challenging. Now you're just making it even more challenging for yourself. This is why I tell students you want to get into the best medical school that you can, because that environment, the institution that you're at, can either raise or lower your ceiling, especially for competitive specialties. Now, the ceiling is not absolute. You can definitely get into a neurosurgery program even if your medical school doesn't have a neurosurgery residency, but it does make it significantly more challenging. So the reframe I want you to think about is that it's not about prestige and being snobby and bragging rights. It's just about infrastructure and probability. And you want to choose the school that's going to preserve optionality for future you. Related to this is that MD versus DO doesn't matter. Doctor is a doctor. And you can also even tie in the international medical graduates into this conversation, like going to the Caribbean, which is a common option for those pre-meds who aren't able to get into a US MD or US DO school. And the reason it feels so good and why a lot of people are saying this on social media is that it sounds inclusive, it's supportive, it reduces the sting of pursuing a less ideal path. And people will be able to point to anecdotes that, hey, I know someone who went to DO or went to IMG Caribbean and they matched into X, Y, and Z specialty and, it's totally possible. But the reason it keeps people stuck is that your likelihood of achieving a certain outcome is going to very much differ based on the pathway. And that gap matters more and more as competitiveness rises. So survivorship bias is very loud online. And yes, you'll see DOs and IMGs who got into plastic surgery or dermatology or neurosurgery, but that doesn't mean that it's easy to do. Actually, kudos to them because it is very challenging to do that, far more so than if you went to a US MD school. There are official data released by the NRMP every single year that shows you the match rate of each and every specialty. You can actually find it compiled all in one easy to use place at specialtyrank.com. And you can toggle MD, DO, IMG and look at the match rates as they differ between each and every specialty. So the reframe that I want you to think about is that this isn't about judging someone, right? It's not that they're a better or worse doctor because they went DO or Caribbean. How seriously you want to take being a doctor and how good of a doctor you are is very much an individual choice. And we actually have some stories about that speaking to current attending physicians that we'll be including in future videos on this channel. So subscribe if you want to hear those. And again, the degree type is not about judging someone. It's just about risk and optionality. So your goal right now is to keep your doors open because, like I said earlier, 73% of med students are going to change their mind about their intended specialty from when they start med school to when they actually graduate and are applying to residency. So what you want to aim for is USMD as your first option. Second option would be USDO, and then Caribbean, you really shouldn't even consider. You should be able to get into USMD or USDO in all honesty. And it's not just me that's saying that. You can look at the data yourself and see that it is far more competitive to go USMD. Look at the average MCAT and the average GPA for USMD matriculants. It is substantially higher than USDO. So USDO is significantly easier to get into. So it's not even me saying that you should go USMD versus DO, it's the market at large, right? There is a self-selection here where the most competitive students, the ones that have the most optionality, they're going USMD and then USDO. And then of course, going Caribbean has a very, very, very low bar. So what many pre-med students and oftentimes college advisors will also focus on is choosing the path that makes your life easier right now because, hey, you want to be a doctor, let's get you into med school. But what you actually want to do is choose the path that makes the rest of your life easier, not harder. So even though it's easier to get into med school now, getting into the residency that you want will be much harder. So do a favor to your future self and give yourself the optionality that makes the rest of your life easier, not harder, unless you have a truly specific reason, like you're really invested in osteopathic manipulative medicine as an example. And point number 6 is to plan your future around the specialty that you want right now. And the reason it feels good is that as humans, we hate uncertainty. Certainty feels motivating and it gives you this sense of identity and direction. But the reason it keeps people stuck is that, again, 73% of medical students change their minds about their specialties. So if you are pre-med and you're not in med school yet, then it's going to be greater than 73%, right? You can still have your preferences. You can still be targeting certain things and getting involved in research in those areas, but still keep an open mind. I was gung-ho about pediatric gastroenterology. I have my own very personal and strong reasons, suffering with inflammatory bowel disease myself, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. I wanted to help children with similar conditions. And I even did research in medical school between my first and second years. But after doing that research, after seeing dozens and dozens of endoscopies, I realized it just wasn't for me. And then I changed my mind into plastic surgery. So the reframe here is still focus on the things you are most interested in, but don't be so close-minded, right? Be open-minded, understand you might change your mind, you probably actually will. And your strategy early on should be to maximize your flexibility and optionality. Think of it this way. Optionality is invisible until you need it. If there's one thing you take away, I want it to be this, that A lot of the good advice, the nice advice out there, it's optimized to make you feel good right now, to reduce the anxiety today. But your job long term is to reduce regret later. You don't have to suffer. You just need to be honest about your trade-offs. Choose optionality, align your probabilities, and then work hard. Much love, my friends. I'll see you all in the next one.